Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey. Jason, no game to review this week as OU had a bye week after beating West Virginia 2 weeks ago. But how did you spend your Saturday with no college football?
Well, I watched other games, writing my Sunday story, working on something comparing OU to the other contenders, and that actually required a lot of updating throughout the day. Notre Dame and some other teams didn't play until late, so a lot of the breakout that went with that story had to change throughout the night. So that's sort of how I spent my Saturday, still watching college football, which wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, not at all. And you mentioned your Sunday package comparing OU to some of the other contenders. Obviously, West Virginia is sort of the most obvious measuring stick at this point because they played Alabama as well. But just what was your major takeaway from that as you looked into how OU to this point has compared with not only Alabama but Auburn, Florida State, Oregon, Notre Dame, other undefeated teams who still have a chance to get into the 14 playoff?
Well, I think they compare really favorably to some. I mean, with Alabama, just looking at margin of victory, looking at the way that they beat West Virginia compared to the way Alabama beat West Virginia. I mean, first of all, you have to look at OU won in Morgantown at night, and I think that makes a difference. And they won by more points than Alabama did in a neutral site game. Obviously, there are other things you have to say with Alabama. Blake Sims, that was his first career start, so that obviously makes a difference, and he's done a lot to get better throughout the year. So it's kind of tough to compare too much, but that's exactly the sort of work the playoff committee's going to have to do. They're going to have to be looking at things like that. I had some people say on Twitter during the Auburn-Louisiana Tech game, I tweeted, well, at this time in the game with OU led Louisiana Tech by this much, and people were saying nobody's going to look at the margin of victory with Louisiana Tech, but I think they will if it comes down to OU and Auburn being, in terms of seeding or first team in, last team out. They're absolutely going to have to do everything they can to compare the teams, and that's a way to compare them.
Yeah, and we look at what the college basketball committee does, and they do a lot of those same types of exercises, and certainly with the committee that has been put together to determine the 4-team playoff, there's going to be similar things done like that.
Well, and with the basketball committee, they're picking 69 teams.
Yeah, 68.
And this committee's picking 4. So obviously there's going to have to be a lot of things they do. Now, I think that there's a good chance that it's real easy. I mean, if by the end of the year there are 4 undefeated conference champions and one major conference that's champion is undefeated, well, then you can do that. Or maybe, but even then you're going to have to look at things like if the SEC champion has one loss and the Big Ten champion is undefeated, you might go with the SEC. So
yeah,
it's going to be tough. I don't envy them, but I think it's fun to talk about and fun to think about.
But and it's something we've talked about for a long time, but it also brings up the strength of schedule, and clearly OU has been pretty aggressive about scheduling. Tennessee obviously wasn't where they probably like them to be, but at the same time, Tennessee almost beat Georgia this weekend. But you look elsewhere in the Big 12, especially at Baylor. I mean, you look at the just polar opposite philosophies in scheduling that Baylor and Art Briles have had versus OU and Bob Stoops and Joe Castiglione. And Art Briles keeps saying, we're going to stick with the same thing that we've done. We're not going to schedule more aggressively. They added Incarnate Word to their schedule during the summer, things like that. Can that hold?
I don't think that that's feasible moving forward. I mean, you've got to do that. I mean, because like I said, you're picking 4 teams. That's not very many, and they're going to do everything they can to separate these teams and separate them into groups. And one group separation, I imagine, is who played a tough out of conference schedule. And when Art Briles was building Baylor up from what they were, and we all know what they were for many, many years, I understand scheduling is soft out of conference because you're trying to build confidence.
Yeah, it's the same thing that Bill Snyder did at Kansas State.
But now Baylor is a good team, and they've recruited well. There's every bit of as much a contender in the Big 12 as Oklahoma is. So, and I guess part of it too is you schedule these games so far in advance. But
Yeah, but Baylor isn't even trying to schedule
No,
anybody
no,
tough.
they're not. They're not trying to do anything like that. So it's tough. I think that's going to come back to bite them. It definitely could. Now the thing though about scheduling in advance that I forgot to mention earlier is with Tennessee. Obviously they're on the upswing, but when OU scheduled Tennessee, they were coming off a 10-win season, and I don't think anybody could have seen the collapse that's happened with Tennessee. But
Thanks
then
to
Tennessee goes out to Georgia and almost wins. That helps.
Yeah, and I think, and we talked about this when we reviewed the Tennessee game, that I think the job that Butch Jones has done there has been, I don't know, great is the right word, but he certainly has them heading in the right direction after, as Paul Feinbaum would say, the disaster that was the Derek Dooley era.
Derek Dooley, I think in many ways Lane Kiffin was a disaster just because of the way he came in and then left right away. I mean, that they thought I think they expected that they had hired him and to have some more stability after the Philip Fulmer era, but I mean, it's just that program's been in shambles for a long time, and now Butch Jones seems to have it heading in the right direction.
All right, Jason. Well, there's a lot of stuff to talk about with college football, but OU specifically coming up this week at TCU, 2:30 on Saturday afternoon. We also got a chance to see, I don't know how much you watched of it. I watched a little bit of the TCU-SMU game. Not a whole lot to take away, just as bad as TCU has been. But
you mean SMU?
SMU has been, excuse me. But what were your impressions of TCU watching that one?
Well, I think the thing I took the most away from it was the offense. This is a very different offense than what we've seen from TCU in the past, what we would expect from Gary Patterson. He comes from the Bill Snyder mold, obviously being a Kansas State guy himself. So, to me, that was the most interesting thing is just how different the offense looks with Sonny Cumbie now as the offensive coordinator, and Trayvon Boykin is throwing the ball a lot better than he has. He's sort of been known as a running quarterback, and now he's taken this step in the passing game, and I think that makes him really dangerous because I think he's a really talented player, Trayvon Boykin, but we just hadn't really seen this side of him too much, except 2 years ago in Fort Worth when OU played there. He looked pretty good in that game, at least in spurts, so throwing the ball.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for me is the improvement that Trayvon Boykin has made, especially in the passing game. Doesn't need to run the ball as much as he has done in the past. There was a question over who was going to be their quarterback this year with the Texas A&M transfer coming up, but Boykin has really seized that job. But the difference that Sonny Cumbie has made has just been has been really interesting with what they're doing with their offense, and it looks a whole lot more like obviously what Sonny Cumbie did at Texas Tech with Cliff Kingsbury, what Oklahoma State does, what West Virginia does. But you look at OU preparing for this. There was some news yesterday about Baker Mayfield. His NCAA waiver request was denied. Big 12 request was denied. But this week he could be a big help for OU as they prepare for TCU on the defensive side.
It sounds like he is. He has been a big help so far, and helping the OU defense get ready for what they're going to see. Now, obviously, OU has played Texas Tech too, and Mike Stoops has played them for the last 2 years, so he knows some of it too. But having a guy who's been inside those meetings, at least last year, is certainly going to be a major help, I think, preparing this week. And also, you have him playing the scout team quarterback role. That can't hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my understanding, when Baker Mayfield came back from home on Sunday night, he had a sit down with Mike Stoops, and they sort of went over TCU's offense and obviously prepared for this week with the scout team, but also just figuring out what the best way to attack TCU defensively was.
Yeah, I mean, and that's huge that OU has him. I mean, Baker Mayfield, it stinks that he lost these appeals, and I think you and I are both on record of saying that we sort of feel like if you're a walk-on, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they can be this restrictive with you. I sort of get not letting him play this year. I might even get not letting him be on scholarship this year, but making him lose that year of eligibility is really, I mean, that just stinks, and I don't think that that's right. But he's already made such an impact on OU because he gives them a really strong quarterback for the scout team that the OU defense has to go against to prepare for. And when you add in Dorial Green Beckham, I mean, shoot, they have a scout team that could maybe beat a lot of other teams' starters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder how this has affected the development of the DBs. I mean, you see, as good as Julian Wilson has been for moving to nickel from nickel to corner, their other young DBs have performed really well. You know, Ahmad Thomas has had his moments, but it certainly helps having guys like that to go against day in and day out, not just when the times you run ones and ones, but when you're running the scout team, you still have a guy like Dorial Green Beckham that can give you fits at times, but also gets you ready for some of the receivers that they're going to see down the road, especially when Baylor comes to Norman in November.
Yeah, definitely.
And Jason, coming up this week at TCU, we've talked a lot about TCU offensively, but defensively is sort of where they've made their mark. How good is this TCU defense, even with the guys that they lost from last year, and obviously mainly Devontae Fields?
Well, I mean, this is a hallmark of Gary Patterson's teams. You know, going back several years, they're always really good at defense, and they don't get blown out by anybody. Even last year when they were 4-8, I don't remember them really getting blown out by anybody.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
They played OU close in Norman. They only lost by 3. Really, it took Brennan Clay's long touchdown run in the fourth quarter to sort of seal that thing off. Otherwise, TCU was right there with them.
Lost to Baylor by 3, I think.
Lost to Baylor by 3. So, yeah, I mean, the defense really is always good at TCU under Patterson, and it's something they make a priority, and that's something OU's going to have to be ready for. This, very well could be the best. I mean, I think it will be the best defense they've faced so far this year. And then you add in the fact that their offense is so much better. I mean, this really could be a trap game for OU.
And then talking about OU's offense, Keith Ford will be out once again this week, but Samaje Perine obviously had a fantastic game against West Virginia. Alex Ross has shown big-time home run hitter potential, and certainly probably their best guy once he gets the ball in space. What do you think they do with their running back rotation? Is it Samaje, or do they still mix things up quite a bit, or what do they do without Keith Ford?
I mean, I think Perine's got to be the main guy. I just think he has to be. What we saw against West Virginia was unbelievable, and if he's capable of doing that, there's no reason that he shouldn't be the guy getting the bulk of the carries. And I think I said last week on the podcast, I even think that maybe he should be the guy getting the bulk of the carries even when Ford comes back, because Keith Ford's a tough runner, and there's no doubt about that, but I don't even know if he can do what Perine can do in terms of that. So, but I think a lot of it, too, depends on how the game goes, and that's a luxury OU coaches have. They can make these decisions. They can, if Alex Ross has a hot hand, or if he, if his brand of running works better against certain defenses, they can go with him. I think that's really the luxury they have with this deep running back group.
And I agree with you for the most part on Perine and Ford. I think Ford has been fantastic as well. But my thing is OU has to develop a deeper group of wide receivers. Sterling Shepard has been just phenomenal this year, moving primarily to the outside. Deron Neal's made some good catches, but still hasn't had that really big breakthrough. KJ Young has made third down plays, but still not doing it consistently. I think they've got to develop second and third guys if you're going to have a guy like Perine in the backfield, just because of the versatility that a guy like Ford gives you, where he can go out and catch passes and make defenses have to open up a little bit in a way that maybe Perine doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to find another receiver. And I think Deron Neal can be that guy. I think KJ Young can be that guy. He's made some really big plays. He had a really good game against West Virginia. So, but I think they've got to have more, and they've got to get more out of those two, and they've got to have other options. Because, and I even think they need to get Blake Bell more involved in the pass game. He's shown that he can catch the ball. For whatever reason, that didn't happen really against West Virginia. But I think that it needs to. moving forward because he's a big target across the middle. He's somebody that really adds a new element to the offense, and so I think that he needs to get more involved.
Yeah, especially when you get down to the red zone, they have to have a big guy who can make plays, and Jeffrey Mead has been in there some, but hasn't been able to go up and make those catches. Obviously, Sterling Shepard has made plays, but doesn't have the size as much to bang around in there. So you've got to get one of those guys, and obviously Blake Bell, I think, is the guy that would make the most sense to get going in the passing game in the red zone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he just because of like I said, his size and the things that he brings to the table and his toughness, he's a perfect guy to sort of get more involved across the middle.
And looking on the defensive side, I think one of the biggest questions of the bye week and this downtime was Zach Sanchez's health. He's had a fantastic run of interceptions. Has an interception in every game this season, every game this year, if you include the Sugar Bowl. It is an OU record as far as his run of interceptions. But he's also struggled some in coverage, and that shoulder certainly hasn't helped it at all. How healthy is Zach Sanchez for this game, and how healthy will he be the rest of the season? We saw Aaron Colvin last year was banged up really for much of the season after his injury and was able to figure out ways to compensate for that.
Well, it sounds like, based on what he said yesterday, Zach Sanchez is pretty healthy, or at least he thinks he feels better. But I think that the only person who really knows how healthy Zach Sanchez is Zach Sanchez. But he sounded confident, and he feels like things are going to be better. I think the week off really helped. It sounds like they're probably going to keep him limited in terms of contact and practice this week, and I think that's a good idea. You don't want to risk anything getting messed up. So, and that's really important because even if he didn't play the best game of his life against West Virginia, he's still better and more experienced than anybody else they have. And I think, Stan Von Taylor and Dakota Austin and Jordan Thomas are all capable of becoming really good players, but they're not Zach Sanchez, even when Zach Sanchez is maybe not 100%.
Absolutely, Jason. And that's all the time we have for today. We'll be back on Thursday with a special guest, and we'll also give our predictions at the end of that podcast. But it should be an interesting week as we prepare to move into OU Texas Week beyond. So OU 2:30 again at TCU on Saturday. Check us out every day on newsok.com and every morning at the Oklahoman for the best OU coverage anywhere.